Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli amma ba'du. Ya Rabbi shalli ala Muhammad waftah minal khairi kullam mulaq. Ya Rabbi shalli ala Muhammad waftah minal khairi kullam mulaq. Ya Rabbi shalli ala Muhammad waftah minal khairi kullam mulaq. Para sahabat ikhwan fillah, inilah sosok seorang muallaf dari Skotlandia. Dia berada di Indonesia dan menjadi muallaf. Yuk kita saksikan bagaimana ceritanya orang ini menjadi muallaf. Selamat menyaksikan.
Called a religion of peace. And the word Islam itself is interesting. It's related to the word salam, which from Arabic is the word for peace. And have you ever wondered how Muslims can go about their lives with this inner serenity, this inner peace, where they just don't seem to be too worried or worked up about things? Like so many Indonesians that I know, they're just really cool, level-headed people. And that struck me as so different from the people from my old country, Canada, where people like me and others were just riddled with anxiety. We had all these issues.
Dari Kanada.
Like this angst was always boiling up inside. And what I realized is one of the main differences between a really religious person and a non-religious person is the future. It's really all about the future. If you think about it, as soon as I became Muslim, suddenly my whole mind was oriented towards a whole new kind of future, where I realized, well, all this stuff here, this isn't it. No, I mean, I'm living my life here, yeah, but this is not the be-all, end-all, yeah. So we're working towards the akhirat, the next life, the life to come, the real life, not this one. I mean, in a way, if you're a Muslim, none of this stuff really matters anyway. So it takes a lot of the edge off and a lot of the pressure off your day-to-day affairs when you don't put so much stress on things, because you're working toward the akhirat, the next life, not considering that this is it. And I think a lot of the anxiety from my point of view before going to Islam came from this not having a future, just having no future at all. Just every day is just like, creeping in this petty pace from day to day, just like Shakespeare said in Macbeth. Whereas Islam gives you access to an authentic inner peace, because you have pushed yourself into a new direction, living toward a whole new kind of future that you didn't have before. And it's that future that makes all the difference.
Dalam video sebelumnya, Imers mengungkapkan mengapa ia memutuskan untuk menjadi seorang muallaf.
How I came to find Islam, the story goes back a long way, back to 2000, 2001. And I was living in the States at the time, in Dallas, Texas. And I just moved there and I was looking for a place to live. And out of nowhere, this man walks into my office and he just says, "Hey, I'm Alif and I've got an apartment and you can rent from me." And he was from Bangladesh, by the way. And at the time, I didn't know anything about Islam and didn't understand the concept of how, if you're a Muslim, you should help people who are wayfarers. I had no concept of this. And I said no. He seemed a bit strange at the time, but he kept on coming back. He just day after day after day. I just couldn't understand the persistence of this person. Like, what does he care about me for? So eventually I said, okay, sure, I'll go in and take a look. And I saw it. It was a nice apartment, so I rented from him. And a few days later, we started to chat about life, and eventually it turned to religion. And he asked me a very key question. He asked me, is it possible that you've been misguided about religion? And I thought for a moment, and I said, well, yeah, of course, it's possible. And I think something changed in my life at that point. At that time, I had no clue, but I think my life took a new direction as soon as I was able to make that answer. Of course, at the time, I wanted nothing to do with religion or Islam. I was a complete atheist, unbeliever. And 4 years after that, I'd already been married and divorced. It was a really bad time for me. And so I started to reevaluate my entire life. I questioned everything. And I withdrew into a little shell within myself. And I started to read again. I wasn't much of a reader. And then I went back to a book that I had read years prior called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. So I read that again, hoping to find some answers. Nothing really happened for me until I got to the back of the book, and there was a list at the back called Wisdom Literature. And I just started to methodically read over the books in that list, including some religious books like the Bhagavad Gita, which I read. I thought, okay, that's pretty good. And then eventually I got to the Quran. I thought, okay, it's translated by Muhammad Marmaduke Pickle, a very specific translation. And so I thought, well, where do I get the book? So I ended up going to a used bookstore back in Winnipeg at the time, and I went to the religious section, and sure enough, there was one old dog-eared copy of this particular translation of the Quran. So of course I bought it. It was $3.50. Still remember the price. Took it home and I read it, and I got through it page after page, cover to cover, and by the end I was just like, this is it. Something went clunk within me, and just something was completed at that point. And because I knew this is it, and because I understood it a little, I realized just how far I was away from the straight path at that time, and I was overwhelmed with just the enormity of the task. How do I possibly do all this? How could I, this humble person, achieve that level of moral rectitude? And so I was quite upset. So I decided to read it again, and I did, cover to cover. Got to near the end, and I was still depressed, and I realized I don't know if I can do this until I read an ayat at the very end. It said, God is always willing to forgive. And that's when I thought, okay, I have a chance. There's a chance for me with this. I can do it. And I also took some pages out of Muhammad's history and realized that he received the Quran for 20 years. So I thought, well, maybe I can give myself 20 years to just do little parts as much as I can at the time from the Quran. And I started out doing what I could do that was easy for me, and with really basic things like cutting out pork and alcohol. That for me was so easy. The same day I read the Quran, that was it. No more alcohol, no more pork for me. The much more difficult things that came quite a long time later were giving in regular charity and regular Ramadan fasting, and also the regular prayers, the salah. Those last three things were the hardest ones to implement. And I'm telling you right now, if it wasn't for my wife, I would probably still not be doing those things. So here we are, Ramadan, day 3, 2024, wishing you all the best, and may God's blessings be with you all.
Allahu a'lam bishawab.
Nah, begitulah tadi perjalanan seorang muallaf ini. Semoga ini bermanfaat dan bisa menjadi referensi bagi kita semua bahwa kebenaran itu adalah Islam, seperti itu. Ya Rabbi salli ala Muhammad waftah minal khairi kulla mawlaq. Ya Rabbi salli ala Muhammad waftah minal khairi kulla mawlaq. Ya Rabbi salli ala Muhammad waftah minal khairi kulla mawlaq. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih Anda sudah menonton.